I used to think the worst thing about working at the Goldstone Deep Space Communications Complex was the isolation. Miles of empty Mojave Desert in every direction. Nothing but dust, Joshua trees, and the occasional coyote. Now I know better. The worst thing isn't what's missing out there. It's what's been hiding all along. My name is Alex Drummond. I'm a communications specialist with 13 years of experience monitoring deep space transmissions. Until 3 weeks ago, my job was tedious but straightforward. I tracked signals from NASA's active missions, occasionally picked up some space debris, and filled out mind-numbing paperwork. The night shift was especially dull. Just me, the distant hum of the massive dish antennas, and endless cups of burnt coffee. That changed on March 17th. I was halfway through my shift when Monitor 3 registered an anomalous signal. This happens occasionally, usually some interference or a glitch in the system. But this was different. The signal was artificial, structured, and coming from something in low Earth orbit. Probably space junk, I muttered, though something felt off. I ran it through our identification protocols, expecting to match it to a known satellite or piece of debris. The system crashed. When it rebooted, a single line of text appeared. Kosmos 152, active, transmitting. I felt a chill run through me. Kosmos 152 was a Soviet reconnaissance satellite launched in 1967. It had been decommissioned decades ago, its batteries long dead, its orbit slowly decaying. It shouldn't have been transmitting anything. I called my supervisor, Dr. Harmon, despite the late hour. "This better be important, Drummond," he growled, voice thick with sleep. "Sir, I'm receiving transmissions from Kosmos 152. A long pause. "That's impossible." "I'm looking at it right now. The satellite is active and broadcasting." Another pause. "What's it transmitting?" "Numbers, coordinates, I think." "Record everything. I'll be there in an hour." By the time Dr. Harmon arrived, I'd filled 3 pages with the repeating sequence of numbers. They definitely weren't random. They followed a pattern, 6 sets of coordinates cycling in a precise order. Dr. Harmon studied my notes, his face growing increasingly pale. "These are all in Kazakhstan," he said finally, "near the old Soviet testing grounds." "Testing grounds for what?" He ignored my question. "Listen carefully. You will tell no one about this. We need to assemble a team immediately." "Why?" "What's going on?" He looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. "Because those coordinates point to something that shouldn't exist. And if that satellite is active again after all these years, we may already be too late." That was the beginning. The moment everything changed. I didn't know then what I was getting into, or the rules I would have to follow to survive. But I'm writing this down now while I still can before they find me, because people need to know what's out there, and they need to know the rules. Dr. Harmon assembled a team faster than I thought possible. By noon the next day, 5 of us were crammed into a secure conference room at Goldstone. Myself, Dr. Harmon, 2 NSA analysts named Wilson and Rodriguez, and an older man who introduced himself only as Burke. His weathered face and military posture screamed government spook. "Let's be clear," Burke began, his voice like gravel. "What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels. If word gets out, people will die." The room fell silent. Burke pulled out a folder stamped with Cyrillic text and spread several black and white photos across the table. They showed a remote facility nestled in the Kazakh steppe, concrete bunkers, metal towers, and what looked like excavation sites. "Operation Zakliatia," he said. "A Soviet program from the Cold War that officially never existed. While we were racing to the moon, they were digging in the steppes of Kazakhstan." "Digging for what?" Rodriguez asked. Burke's expression darkened. "Something they should have left alone. In 1967, they found it. An object of unknown origin buried approximately 300 meters below the surface. The Soviets believed it predated human civilization." I felt my skin crawl. "And Kosmos 152 was connected to this operation?" "It wasn't just connected," Burke said. The satellite contained backup data from the project, including the exact coordinates of multiple sites they were excavating. When the Soviet Union collapsed, the project was abandoned. The sites were sealed, the records destroyed, and everyone involved disappeared. Dr. Harmon leaned forward. Until now. Exactly, Burke confirmed. 3 days ago, we detected unusual seismic activity at the primary site. Now this satellite suddenly reactivates after decades of silence. This is not a coincidence. Wilson, the younger of the NSA guys, looked skeptical. So what's the plan? We can't exactly stroll into Kazakhstan to check it out. We don't need to, Burke replied. One of the coordinates is different from the others. It's right here in the Nevada desert, about 60 miles north of this facility. My stomach dropped. There's a Soviet site here, on American soil? Not Soviet, Burke corrected. The object they found in Kazakhstan wasn't unique. There are others spread across the globe. The Soviets found one. We found another. Dr. Harmon pulled up a satellite image on his laptop. It showed what looked like an abandoned mining operation in the middle of nowhere. This is Site Indigo, Dr. Harmon explained. Officially, it was a failed copper mine that closed in 1972. In reality, it's been a black site ever since. Whatever the Soviets found, we found something similar. Burke handed each of us a sealed envelope. If you're going to visit Site Indigo, there are rules you need to follow. Memorize them. Your lives depend on it. I opened my envelope with trembling fingers and unfolded the single sheet inside. Site Indigo Protocols 1. Maintain radio silence within 500 meters of the site perimeter. 2. Electronic devices must be powered down completely before entering the main shaft. 3. Do not remain underground for more than 60 minutes at a time. 4. If you hear whispers in a language you don't understand, exit immediately. 5. If instruments detect radiation exceeding 40 microsieverts per hour, seal the area and evacuate. 6. Never touch any surfaces with bare skin. 7. The number 3 is significant. Count in threes when navigating. 8. If you see symbols that appear to change when not directly observed, report but do not photograph them. This is a joke, right? Wilson said, though his voice lacked conviction. Burke's face remained stone-cold serious. The last team that went in without following these protocols never came back. We found their equipment 3 miles away, just their equipment. I swallowed hard. When do we leave? Tomorrow morning, Dr. Harmon replied. We need to understand why that satellite activated now and what it's trying to tell us. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at the rules, trying to make sense of them. Count in threes? Whispers in unknown languages? It read like something from a horror movie, not a scientific expedition. Around 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep and checked the satellite signal again. The coordinates were still broadcasting, but now there was something else, a binary sequence repeating between each set of numbers. I translated it quickly. They are awake. I called Dr. Harmon immediately. You need to see this, I told him when he arrived, pointing to my translation. He stared at it for a long moment. Pack your things. We're leaving now. Now? It's the middle of the night. Better to arrive in daylight, he said cryptically. And Alex, bring extra batteries for everything. You'll need them. As I gathered my equipment, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were making a terrible mistake. Whatever waited for us at Site Indigo had been buried for a reason. Maybe it should have stayed that way. But by sunrise, we were already halfway there, driving deeper into the Nevada desert with Burke's rules seared into my mind, and the satellite's ominous message echoing in my thoughts. They are awake. What had we awakened? And why was it reaching out now, after all these years? The Nevada desert is a different kind of emptiness at dawn. Not peaceful, just vacant and indifferent. Our convoy of 2 black SUVs kicked up dust trails as we followed a barely visible access road away from civilization. Burke drove the lead vehicle with Dr. Harmon beside him. I sat in the back with Wilson while Rodriguez followed in the second SUV carrying our equipment. You believe any of this shit? Wilson whispered, adjusting his glasses. A former codebreaker from Fort Meade, he looked too young to be mixed up in whatever this was. I don't know what to believe, I admitted, but that satellite shouldn't be active. Its power cells would have died decades ago. And these rules, he continued, pulling out his copy. Number 7 makes no sense. Count in threes when navigating. What does that even mean? Burke's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. It means exactly what it says. The structure beneath Site Indigo doesn't follow Euclidean geometry. People have gotten lost in there. Corridors that should connect don't. Rooms that appear on blueprints don't exist when you look for them, and vice versa. That's impossible, Wilson scoffed. Burke's weathered face remained impassive. 3 right turns should bring you back to where you started, right? Not in there, but 3 sets of 3 turns will. Always count your turns in threes if you want to find your way back. Nobody spoke for several minutes. The sun climbed higher, baking the landscape as we drove deeper into nowhere. Eventually, a chain-link fence appeared on the horizon, surrounding what looked like an abandoned industrial site. A few dilapidated buildings, a water tower, and the dark mouth of a mine shaft. "Welcome to Site Indigo," Burke announced as we approached a rusted gate. He punched a code into a surprisingly modern keypad hidden in a weathered electrical box. The gate slid open with a mechanical whine that seemed obscenely loud in the desert silence. "Remember radio silence from here on out," Burke reminded us as we drove through. "Power down your phones now." I switched off my phone and watched the others do the same. My instincts were screaming at me to leave, to get back in the vehicle and drive away as fast as possible. Something about this place felt wrong, like standing too close to a high-voltage line. You can't see the danger, but you can feel it humming through your bones. Dr. Harmon must have noticed my expression. "It affects everyone that way the first time," he said quietly. "The Russians called it odvrashchenie, revulsion. They believed it was a defense mechanism." "From what?" He didn't answer. We parked near the mine entrance and unloaded our gear in silence. Rodriguez distributed equipment, hazmat suits, respirators, radiation detectors, sample kits, and heavy-duty flashlights. "Suits on before we approach the shaft," Burke ordered. "And remember Rule 6, nothing touches your skin." As I zipped up my hazmat suit, I noticed Burke whispering something to himself. A prayer, maybe, or a mantra. It didn't inspire confidence. "The facility is approximately 200 meters down," Dr. Harmon explained as we approached the mine shaft. "It was built inside a natural cave system that was expanded during the Cold War. The elevator still works, but we'll take the emergency stairs as a precaution." The mine entrance was secured with a massive steel door, disguised to look weather-beaten from the outside. Burke unlocked it with a key from around his neck, revealing a modern airlock beyond. "Last chance to back out," Burke said, looking at each of us. Nobody moved. "All right. From this point on, we follow the protocols exactly. 1 hour maximum underground. We check the chamber, collect what data we can, and leave. Questions?" "What exactly are we looking for down there?" I asked. "Anything that might explain why that satellite activated," Dr. Harmon replied. "And any signs of activity." "Activity? You'll know it if you see it," Burke said grimly. We cycled through the airlock and descended a narrow metal staircase that spiraled into darkness. Our flashlight beams bounced off damp walls, creating moving shadows that played tricks on my eyes. The air grew colder with each step, carrying a metallic tang that penetrated even through my respirator. I counted the turns as we descended, remembering Rule 7, 3, 6, 9, 12. After the 15th turn, the staircase opened into a large antechamber carved from the bedrock. The floor was smooth concrete, and the walls were lined with abandoned monitoring equipment. "This is the observation post," Burke explained. "The primary chamber is through there." He pointed to a heavy blast door on the far side of the room. "Before we continue, everyone activate your radiation detectors." My detector showed normal background levels, for now. "Rodriguez, set up the auxiliary lighting. Wilson, start mapping the signal strengths. Alex, You're with me and Harmon. We're going to check the primary chamber." Rodriguez began assembling portable LED arrays while Wilson unpacked signal detection equipment. I followed Burke and Dr. Harmon toward the blast door, trying to ignore the growing pressure in my ears and the strange sense that we were being watched. The blast door had a mechanical lock that required 3 keys turned simultaneously. Burke produced his key, while Dr. Harmon took another from a secure case. The 3rd key came from a hidden compartment in the floor. 3 keys, 3 people, 3 turns, Burke muttered. Always in threes. The locks disengaged with a heavy clunk, and the door swung open on surprisingly silent hinges. A wave of colder air washed over us as our flashlights revealed a perfectly circular chamber about 40 feet in diameter. The walls, floor, and ceiling were covered in a material that resembled black glass, etched with intricate patterns that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. In the center of the room stood a pedestal of the same material, and on it rested an object that defied easy description, roughly cylindrical, about the size of a car battery, but with surfaces that appeared to fold into themselves in ways that hurt my eyes to look at directly. "What the hell is that?" I whispered. "We don't know, Doctor," Harmon admitted. "We've been studying it for 50 years, and we still don't know." Burke approached the pedestal cautiously. "Something's different," he said, his voice tight. "The patterns are moving." I focused on the etchings in the black surface. At first I thought it was a trick of the light, but as I watched more carefully I could see that the intricate designs were indeed slowly shifting, reconfiguring themselves like a living circuit board. "This isn't supposed to happen," Dr. Harmon said, his voice rising with alarm. "It's never done this before." My radiation detector suddenly beeped, 5 microsieverts per hour, then 8, then 12. "Radiation's climbing," I warned. "Document everything," Burke ordered, his voice steady despite the situation. "We need to understand what's happening before—" He stopped mid-sentence as a low hum began emanating from the object, vibrating through my bones. The black surfaces brightened almost imperceptibly, tiny pinpricks of light appearing within the material like distant stars. And then I heard it, whispers, just at the edge of perception, in a language I couldn't identify. Rule 4 flashed in my mind. If you hear whispers in a language you don't understand, exit immediately. "We need to leave," I said urgently. "Now." Dr. Harmon nodded, already backing toward the door. "Burke, come on." But Burke stood transfixed, staring at the object with an expression of terrible wonder. "It's communicating," he murmured. "After all these years, it's finally speaking to us." The radiation detector hit 30 microsieverts per hour. "Burke!" I shouted. "We have to go." He turned to us, eyes wide. "Don't you hear what it's saying?" He took a step toward the object, and that's when everything went to hell. The black material covering the walls began to sweat. That's the only word I can think of to describe it. Beads of something like oil formed on every surface, glistening under our flashlights before dripping upward, defying gravity to crawl across the ceiling toward the central object. "Fuck this," I muttered, grabbing Burke's arm. "We're leaving." He shook me off with surprising strength. "You don't understand. I can hear it clearly now." Dr. Harmon was already at the doorway. "Radiation's at 38 microsieverts per hour. We're approaching evacuation levels." The whispers grew louder, more insistent. Though I couldn't understand the words, they carried a cadence that felt almost familiar, like a half-remembered song played too slowly. Burke took another step toward the pedestal just as my detector hit 40 microsieverts per hour, triggering the alarm. Rule 5. If instruments detect radiation exceeding 40 microsieverts per hour, seal the area and evacuate. "Rodriguez!" I shouted through the doorway. "Evacuation protocol. Now!" In the antechamber, Rodriguez and Wilson scrambled to their feet, already gathering emergency equipment. Wilson looked terrified. I turned back to Burke, who now stood directly before the pedestal, his gloved hand outstretched toward the impossible object. The liquid-like substance from the walls was converging on it, coating the object in a glistening film. "They've been waiting," Burke whispered. "All this time, they've been waiting for us to understand." "Burke, don't." Too late. His fingers brushed against the surface of the object. The effect was instantaneous. The whispers crescendoed into a shriek that wasn't sound but somehow still filled my head with white noise. Burke's body went rigid, then began to convulse. The material of his hazmat suit bubbled where it had made contact with the object, melting away to expose the skin beneath. And then his skin began to change too. "Close the door!" Dr. Harmon yelled, yanking me backward. "Seal it now!" I stumbled into the antechamber as Dr. Harmon slammed the blast door shut. Burke's screams cut off abruptly as the locks engaged. "What about Burke?" Rodriguez demanded. "He's gone," Dr. Harmon said flatly. "We need to finish the containment sequence and get out." "What the hell happened in there?" Wilson's voice was shaking. Before anyone could answer, a deep vibration rumbled through the facility. Dust showered from the ceiling. The lights on our radiation detectors all maxed out simultaneously. "The primary chamber is breaching," Dr. Harmon said, his scientific detachment crumbling. "We have less than 10 minutes to reach the surface." Rodriguez quickly initiated the emergency lockdown, sealing the compromised chamber behind additional bulkheads. Wilson gathered our essential data equipment, while I helped Dr. Harmon access a hidden panel that revealed an ancient-looking red telephone. "Base, this is Harmon at Indigo," he said urgently. "We have a Level 1 breach. Repeat, Level 1. The asset is active and Burke is compromised. We need immediate containment and decontamination protocols." He listened briefly, then hung up. "A response team will be here in 20 minutes. We need to be on the surface by then." As we turned to leave, a metallic screech came from behind the sealed blast door, followed by a heavy impact that dented the metal inward. "Move," Dr. Harmon ordered. We ran for the spiral staircase, our breathing loud in our respirators. I forced myself to count the turns as we ascended. 3, 6, 9. At the 12th turn, Wilson suddenly stopped. "Wait," he said, confusion evident in his voice. "This isn't right. We should be seeing the upper level by now." He was right. The staircase continued upward, identical metal steps spiraling into darkness, with no sign of the exit. "We missed a turn, Doctor," Harmon said, though I had been counting carefully. "Let's continue for 3 more and reassess. 13, 14, 15. Still no exit, just more stairs." "This is impossible," Rodriguez muttered. "We're going in circles." Another impact shook the stairwell, this one from somewhere below us. It sounded closer than it should have been. "Rule 7, I said suddenly. "Count in 3s when navigating. We need to go up exactly 3 more turns, then take a different action." "Like what?" Wilson demanded. "I don't know, but Burke said 3 sets of 3 turns. We've done 15. We need 3 more to complete a set of 18. 16, 17, 18. At the 18th turn, instead of continuing upward, I stopped and pressed my hand against the outer wall of the stairwell. To my shock, the seemingly solid metal yielded like fabric, revealing a hidden passage. "Holy shit," Rodriguez whispered. "Let's go," Dr. Harmon urged, already ducking through the opening. The passage led to a horizontal tunnel that gently sloped upward. We followed it for what felt like an eternity, our flashlight beams barely penetrating the thick darkness ahead. The further we went, the more disoriented I became. My watch showed we'd been underground for 47 minutes. Rule 3 gave us only 60. "Does anyone hear that?" Wilson asked suddenly. We stopped. In the silence, I could make out a faint sound, whispering again, but different from before. This had a rhythmic quality, almost like counting. "It's counting in Russian, Doctor," Harmon realized. 1, 2, 3, over and over. "Which rule covers this?" Rodriguez asked nervously. "None of them," I replied. "But Rule 4 only mentioned languages we don't understand, since we know this is Russian." "We press on, Doctor," Harmon decided. The counting grew louder as we continued up the tunnel. After another 5 minutes of walking, we reached a junction where the passage split into 3 identical corridors. "Which way?" Wilson asked. I remembered Rule 7 again. 3 is significant. We need to try all 3 paths in sequence. We don't have time for that, Rodriguez argued. We have less than 10 minutes left. Wait, Dr. Harmon said, studying the junction carefully. Look at the floor. I aimed my flashlight downward. Barely visible in the concrete were 3 symbols etched in a row. They looked like archaic numerals. 1, 2, 3. The 3rd path, I said with certainty. We took the rightmost corridor, which immediately began to slope more steeply upward. After precisely 3 minutes of climbing, we emerged not at the mine entrance where we'd started, but in a different part of the facility entirely, what looked like an abandoned control room. I know where we are, Dr. Harmon said with obvious relief. This is the original monitoring station. The exit is just beyond that door. As if on cue, a thunderous crash echoed from deep within the facility, followed by what sounded like tearing metal. Whatever had been Burke was moving faster than we'd anticipated. Go! Dr. Harmon shouted. We burst through the door and found ourselves emerging from what looked like a supply shed, about 100 yards from where we'd parked our vehicles. The sun was high in the sky now, baking the desert hardpan. Don't remove your suits until we reach the vehicles, Dr. Harmon ordered. The air could be contaminated. We sprinted across the open ground. I kept expecting to hear Burke, or whatever he had become, behind us. But the only sounds were our labored breathing and the crunch of our boots on the hard, packed earth. We reached the SUVs just as a black helicopter appeared on the horizon, approaching rapidly from the direction of Nellis Air Force Base, the response team right on schedule. Get in, Dr. Harmon commanded. We need to clear the immediate area before they initiate containment protocols. We piled into the lead SUV, Rodriguez behind the wheel. As we drove toward the gate, I looked back at Site Indigo through my suit's faceplate. The seemingly abandoned buildings looked exactly as they had when we arrived. Weathered, forgotten, harmless. But as we passed through the gate, something caught my eye. A figure standing by the mine entrance watching us leave. Even from this distance, I could tell it wasn't human anymore. It raised an arm in what almost looked like a wave. My satellite phone rang, the one device that had remained powered off until now. Don't answer that, Dr. Harmon said sharply. It could be the response team, Rodriguez argued. It's not, I said with certainty, watching the distant figure lower its arm. It's him. The phone continued to ring as we drove, finally stopping as we passed beyond the 500-meter mark specified in Rule 1. The moment it fell silent, Rodriguez pulled over. We removed our hazmat suits with trembling hands, grateful for the fresh air despite the desert heat. Wilson was the first to speak. What happens now? Dr. Harmon looked grim. The containment team will secure the site. They have protocols for this situation. Will they kill him? I asked. It's not Burke anymore, Dr. Harmon replied. But no, I don't think they can kill it. The best they can do is contain it and hope whatever's happening stays limited to Site Indigo. And the satellite? Rodriguez asked. It's still transmitting those coordinates. Dr. Harmon didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was quiet. Site Indigo is just one location. The satellite is broadcasting 5 others. The implications hit me like a physical blow. You think this is happening at all the sites, simultaneously? I think, Dr. Harmon said carefully, that we need to get back to Goldstone immediately and monitor those other coordinates. Because if what happened to Burke is happening elsewhere... He didn't need to finish the thought. The helicopter had landed at Site Indigo now, disgorging a team in specialized containment gear. But I couldn't shake the image of Burke's transformed figure, standing calmly in the sunlight, watching us go. Or the fact that whatever had been awakened down there had figured out how to use a phone. The drive back to Goldstone was tense and mostly silent. Rodriguez kept checking the rearview mirror as if expecting something to be following us. Wilson stared blankly out the window, occasionally muttering calculations under his breath. Dr. Harmon was on his secure phone, speaking in clipped sentences to someone higher up the chain. I couldn't stop thinking about Burke, the way he'd reached for that object without hesitation, the conviction in his voice when he said it was communicating. What had he heard that we couldn't? We arrived at Goldstone just after 2 p.m., The facility seemed unnervingly normal, technicians going about their routine work, unaware that anything had changed. We were escorted to a secure sublevel I hadn't known existed, where a makeshift command center had been established. A wiry man with close-cropped grey hair met us at the door. "Director Lawrence," he introduced himself curtly. "I understand we've had a situation." Dr. Harmon nodded grimly. "Burke's been compromised. Site Indigo is under containment protocol, but the asset is definitely active. And the satellite?" "Still transmitting," I said. "The same 6 coordinates on a loop plus the binary message." Lawrence gestured to a large digital map on the wall. 5 red pins marked locations across the globe: Kazakhstan, Siberia, Greenland, the South Pacific, and the Antarctic Peninsula. The 6th was Site Indigo. "We have assets near 3 of the locations," Lawrence explained. "Teams are en route to the Kazakh and Siberian sites. The Greenland location is under Danish authority. They're sending their own people. The South Pacific site is problematic. It's under 2 miles of water. And the Antarctic location." He paused. "We lost contact with McMurdo Station 12 hours ago." My blood ran cold. "Lost contact how?" "Total communications blackout. Could be weather, could be equipment failure." Nobody believed that. "What about the satellite itself?" Dr. Harmon asked. "Any way to disable it?" Lawrence shook his head. "We've considered it, but the risk is too high. For all we know, destroying the satellite could trigger some kind of failsafe. We need to understand what we're dealing with first." Wilson, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. "I've been analyzing the signal pattern. It's changed." All heads turned toward him. "The coordinates are the same, but the timing between them has shifted. It's transmitting them in a different sequence now." Lawrence frowned. "What's the significance?" "It's counting down," Wilson said, his voice hollow. "Each location is being broadcast with decreasing frequency. Antarctica is now first in the sequence, then Kazakhstan, then Siberia. Site Indigo is last." "A countdown to what?" Rodriguez asked. No one answered. No one needed to. Lawrence directed us to workstations. "Drummond, I want you monitoring the satellite signal continuously. Rodriguez, coordinate with the field teams. Wilson, keep working on that pattern. Dr. Harmon, you're with me." For the next several hours, I tracked the signal from Kosmos 152. Wilson was right. The transmission pattern was evolving, the intervals between coordinates growing shorter for some, longer for others. It was like watching a countdown in slow motion. Around 7 p.m., we received our first update from the Kazakhstan team. They had reached the perimeter of the old Soviet facility. Their initial report mentioned unusual weather conditions, localized electrical storms, temperature fluctuations, and unexplained radiation spikes. Indigo showed the same patterns just before Burke touched the object, Dr. Harmon noted. An hour later, the Siberian team reported similar findings. The Greenland team was still en route, delayed by a sudden blizzard that had appeared out of nowhere. At 9:13 p.m., we lost contact with the Kazakhstan team mid-transmission. Multiple contacts moving from the central chamber. Unknown configuration. They appear to be static. Lawrence ordered immediate satellite surveillance of the Kazakh site. But cloud cover had suddenly thickened, rendering visual observation impossible. Thermal scanning showed multiple heat signatures moving outward from the facility like ripples in a pond. "Whatever was sleeping there is awake now," Dr. Harmon said quietly. My terminal beeped. The satellite signal had changed again. The binary message between coordinates had expanded. They are awake and rising. I reported the change immediately. Lawrence's face hardened. "I'm initiating global containment protocol," he announced. "All sites are to be considered compromised." "What about the people in Antarctica?" I asked. "We can't just write them off." "There's nothing we can do for McMurdo right now," Lawrence said. "Our priority is containing this before it spreads." Dr. Harmon pulled me aside. "There's something Lawrence isn't telling us," he whispered. "The objects at these sites, they're not just artifacts, they're seeds." "Seeds? For what?" "We don't know exactly. But the Soviets had theories. They believed the objects were left by something that visited Earth millions of years ago, a means of reconnecting when the time was right. And that time is now? Why? Dr. Harmon hesitated. The original Soviet team discovered writing at their site. Most of it was untranslatable, but one phrase kept recurring. When the Watchers speak again. The realization hit me. The satellite. It's a watcher. He nodded. We always assumed these were dead relics. But what if they were just dormant, waiting for a signal? When Kosmos 152 reactivated, it woke them up, I finished. But what reactivated the satellite? Before he could answer, alarms blared throughout the command center. Wilson shouted from his terminal, "Massive energy spike at Site Indigo." The containment team is reporting a breach. Surveillance footage appeared on the main screen, showing chaos at the Nevada site. Strange light poured from the mine entrance, and figures moved erratically around the perimeter. Some of them didn't move like humans anymore. "It's spreading faster than we anticipated," Lawrence said, his composure finally cracking. "We need to evacuate this facility immediately." "To where?" Rodriguez demanded. "If this is happening globally..." "We have hardened bunkers designed for this contingency," Lawrence cut him off. "Transportation is being arranged." As the command center erupted into activity, I noticed something odd on my monitor. The satellite signal had changed again, but in a different way. Its orbit was decaying rapidly. Kosmos 152 was falling back to Earth. I calculated its trajectory and felt my stomach lurch. "Sir," I called to Lawrence, "the satellite is coming down." He hurried over. "Where?" "Right here, Central Nevada. Impact in approximately 3 hours." Lawrence stared at the projection, face ashen. "It's not random," he said finally. "None of this is random." "What do you mean?" He turned to address the room. "Change of plans. We're not evacuating. We're implementing Protocol Zero." The room fell silent. Whatever Protocol Zero was, it clearly wasn't good news. "Sir," one of the technicians began, "Protocol Zero requires presidential..." "Authorization has been granted," Lawrence interrupted. "This facility was built for this contingency. The satellite is coming to us, and we need to be ready when it arrives." He turned to me, Rodriguez, Wilson, and Dr. Harmon. "You four have direct experience with an active site. That makes you our best assets now." "For what?" I asked, although I was beginning to suspect the answer. "The satellite isn't just transmitting coordinates," Lawrence said grimly. "It's coming home, bringing something with it, and we need to establish new containment protocols before it gets here." He handed each of us a new document. This one had a single heading, Protocol Zero, Receiving the Messenger. Protocol Zero contained 9 rules, each more disturbing than the last. 1. When the messenger arrives, do not look directly at its true form. 2. Maintain absolute silence during the greeting phase. No verbal communication, no matter what you hear or see. 3rd. Offer no resistance when the integration begins. Resistance accelerates corruption. 4. If bleeding occurs from eyes, ears, or other orifices, do not attempt to staunch the flow. The fluids are rejected matter. 5. Those who speak in new tongues must be separated immediately. They are conduits, not colleagues. 6. Digital recording devices will not function in the messenger's presence. Written records must be maintained using graphite only. 7. If the temperature drops suddenly, integration has begun. Symptoms of hypothermia should be ignored. The cold preserves cognitive function. 8. After contact, count fingers and toes hourly. Report any numerical inconsistencies. 9. In case of total protocol failure, the failsafe is 37319. Memorize this sequence. "What the hell is integration?" Rodriguez demanded, looking up from his copy. "And what's the failsafe?" I added. Lawrence ignored our questions. "You have 1 hour to prepare. The facility will be locked down in accordance with deep isolation procedures. We have supplies for 30 days, But if all goes according to plan, this will be resolved within 12 hours. And if it doesn't go according to plan? Wilson asked nervously. Lawrence's expression remained impassive. Then nothing will matter after that. The next hour passed in a blur of activity. The Goldstone facility transformed around us as hidden security measures activated. Steel shutters descended over windows. Air filtration systems hummed to life. Armed personnel appeared from nowhere, taking up positions throughout the complex. We were each assigned preparation tasks. Mine was to establish a direct link to the satellite's transmission, creating a two-way communication channel. The implication was clear. We weren't just waiting for the satellite to crash into us. We were preparing to communicate with whatever was coming with it. Rodriguez was tasked with setting up a clean room where the greeting would take place, a reinforced chamber at the heart of the facility, surrounded by monitoring equipment. Wilson was working on decoding the latest transmissions, which had become increasingly complex as the satellite descended. Dr. Harmon joined me as I finished calibrating the communication array. "There's something you should know," he said quietly, checking to ensure we weren't overheard. "I've worked at Goldstone for 23 years. Protocol 0 isn't new. It was established in 1972 after the first object was discovered. How many people know about this? Very few. It was theoretical, a contingency so remote that most dismissed it as paranoia. The idea that all 6 objects would activate simultaneously." He shook his head. "It was considered mathematically impossible. Yet, here we are," I muttered. "Why is this happening now? What changed?" Dr. Harmon hesitated. 3 months ago, we detected an anomalous signal from deep space, beyond our solar system. It lasted just 9.7 seconds, but it matched frequencies we've recorded from the objects. We thought it was a coincidence. You think something out there sent a wake-up call, and the satellite was part of it. I think, he said carefully, that what's happening was always going to happen. We just accelerated the timeline by finding the objects in the first place. My blood ran cold. We woke something up that wasn't ready yet. And now it's improvising. He glanced at his watch. The satellite enters the atmosphere in 40 minutes. We should get to the clean room. As we walked through the transformed facility, I noticed staff being evacuated from the non-essential areas. Only those directly involved with Protocol 0 remained, about 20 people in total. The rest were being transported to fallback positions miles away. The clean room was a stark white chamber about 30 feet square with a domed ceiling and no windows. In the center stood a circular platform surrounded by monitoring equipment. Technicians made final adjustments to instruments I didn't recognize. Lawrence stood before a wall-mounted timer, counting down to impact. Rodriguez and Wilson were already there, both looking pale. "Final briefing," Lawrence announced as we gathered. "The satellite will enter the atmosphere at 23:47 local time. Based on its degradation pattern, it will mostly burn up, but the core component, what we're calling the messenger, is designed to survive re-entry. It will land approximately 400 meters from this facility and will likely be inert for 3 to 7 minutes. During that window, a retrieval team will secure it and bring it here. Once it's on that platform," he pointed to the center of the room, "we initiate contact according to Protocol 0. Questions?" "Just one," I said. "What exactly is going to come out of that satellite?" Lawrence's expression didn't change. "We don't know. The original theorists believed it would be a communication device of some kind, a way for whatever left those objects to speak directly to us." "But you don't believe that," Dr. Harmon observed. "What I believe doesn't matter," Lawrence replied. "What matters is following Protocol 0 exactly as written. Our predecessors left very specific instructions for this scenario." "And integration," Rodriguez pressed. "What does that mean?" Lawrence paused, choosing his words carefully. "Integration refers to the theoretical merging of their communication methods with ours. It may be uncomfortable, but it's necessary if we want to understand what's happening." "Rule 3 says not to resist it," Wilson noted nervously, "and Rule 4 mentions bleeding." "Those are worst-case scenarios," Lawrence assured him, though his tone lacked conviction. "Most likely the messenger will simply transmit information that our instruments can interpret. No one looked reassured. "Take your positions," Lawrence ordered. "Impact in 25 minutes." We were each assigned monitoring stations around the perimeter of the room. I found myself next to a device labeled Cognitive Dissolution Monitor, not exactly comforting. Dr. Harmon stationed himself near an old-fashioned seismograph. Wilson watched radiation levels, while Rodriguez monitored atmospheric changes within the chamber. The final countdown was conducted in silence. At 5 minutes to impact, the facility's lights dimmed, switching to backup power. Security protocols sealed the clean room from the rest of the complex. "Satellite has entered the atmosphere," announced a technician's voice over the intercom. "Breakup beginning as expected. Core component intact and on projected trajectory." I watched the radar track Cosmos 152's descent. It was coming in hot and fast, directly toward us. The satellite that shouldn't have been functional was now performing a targeted landing that should have been impossible. "Impact in 10 seconds, came the announcement. We braced ourselves, though the impact site was far enough away that we wouldn't feel it directly. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1... A flash of light illuminated the night sky on our external cameras, followed by a distant thud that vibrated through the ground. On the radar screen, a single point glowed where the core of Kosmos 152 had made landfall. "Retrieval team deploying," Lawrence said tersely. We watched on monitors as 4 figures in specialized containment suits approached the impact site. The camera feed was grainy and kept cutting out, but I could make out a small crater where something metallic gleamed in the darkness. The retrieval team surrounded the object. It appeared to be a sphere about the size of a basketball, its surface unmarked by the violent descent through the atmosphere. They secured it in a containment vessel and began their return journey. "No signs of activity," reported the team leader. "Object is inert, temperature nominal, no radiation detected." "Bring it directly to the clean room," Lawrence ordered. 17 minutes later, the retrieval team arrived. They placed the containment vessel on the central platform and retreated from the room. Only the core Protocol Zero team remained. Myself, Doctor. Harmon, Rodriguez, Wilson, Lawrence, and 3 senior technicians. "Remember the rules," Lawrence said quietly. "Especially Rule 2. No verbal communication once the containment vessel is opened." He approached the vessel and entered a code on its digital lock. The top slid open with a hiss of escaping air. Inside lay the core of Cosmos 152, a perfect sphere of what looked like polished metal. Its surface reflected the room in distorted waves, like mercury, but solid. There were no seams, no marks, nothing to indicate it was a manufactured object rather than a natural formation. For a long moment, nothing happened. The sphere sat inert on the platform while we watched from our stations. Then, almost imperceptibly, it began to move, not rolling or shifting, but somehow flowing, its surface rippling like water despite remaining perfectly spherical. The temperature in the room dropped suddenly, my breath fogged in front of my face. Rule 7. If the temperature drops suddenly, integration has begun. The sphere's surface became less reflective, turning cloudy and then transparent, revealing something moving inside. Shapes that made no sense to my eyes, geometries that seemed to fold into and through themselves. A sound filled the room, not emanating from the sphere, but somehow present in my head directly. It wasn't language, but it carried meaning, images flashing through my mind too quickly to process. Stars burning out, vast mechanisms beneath planets, things moving between worlds, Earth seen from an impossible distance. The 6 sites glowing like beacons, something vast awakening. Blood dripped onto my console. My nose was bleeding profusely, but following Rule 4, I made no move to stop it. Around the room, the others were experiencing the same, crimson streams flowing from noses, ears, even the corners of eyes. The sphere was fully transparent now, revealing its contents. Not a machine or device, but something organic, cellular structures that constantly rearranged themselves, familiar yet alien. One of the technicians broke Rule 2. "It's alive," he whispered. The effect was immediate. The sphere pulsed once, and the technician collapsed, his body convulsing. His skin rippled as though something moved beneath it, and then he was still. Lawrence made rapid hand gestures, reminding us to maintain silence. The sphere rose from the platform, hovering at eye level. It began to rotate, slowly at first, then faster until it became a blur. The images in my mind intensified. Burke standing at Site Indigo, but changed, improved. The Kazakhstan team, transformed, moving with new purpose. Antarctica, a vast structure rising from beneath the ice. A network spreading across Earth's surface, integration, unity, purpose. The images carried emotions with them, not human emotions, but something adjacent to satisfaction, anticipation, and hunger. Rodriguez suddenly staggered back from his station, hands clutching his head. Blood streamed between his fingers as he bit his lip to keep from crying out. His eyes met mine, filled with terror and something else, recognition. He knew what the sphere was showing us. He understood, and whatever he understood terrified him beyond reason. The sphere pulsed again, brighter this time. The fallen technician's body jerked and then rose to its feet, movements jerky and uncoordinated. His eyes were gone, replaced by swirling darkness. He turned toward Lawrence and opened his mouth. What emerged wasn't a voice, but a sound like grinding metal, forming words with terrible precision. Integration proceeding as planned. All sites activated. The network awakens. Lawrence's face remained impassive, though blood trickled from his right ear. He made no response, following Rule 2. The transformed technician tilted his head at an impossible angle. You know the protocol. Why do you resist? This was always the plan. I looked down at my hands, remembering Rule 8. Count fingers and toes hourly. Report any numerical inconsistencies. I had 6 fingers on my right hand. When had that happened? The sphere pulsed a third time, and the room plunged into darkness. Emergency lighting flickered on, bathing the clean room in a dim red glow. The sphere hovered at the center, perfectly still now, its surface once again reflective. The transformed technician stood beside it, head tilted as though listening to something none of us could hear. I kept my eyes on the floor, remembering Rule 1. Do not look directly at its true form. The sphere wasn't the messenger. It was just a container. Whatever was inside was the true messenger, and my instincts screamed that seeing it would be the end of me. My right hand still had 6 fingers. I tried to count them again, hoping I'd made a mistake, but the extra digit remained, a slender, pale addition between my ring and pinky fingers. It moved when I told it to, as though it had always been there. Wilson was frozen at his monitoring station, eyes squeezed shut, tears of blood leaking from beneath his eyelids. Dr. Harmon had maintained his composure better than most, meticulously recording observations with a graphite pencil as specified in Rule 6. Lawrence stood stock still, face expressionless despite the blood now flowing freely from both ears. Rodriguez caught my eye and subtly raised his hand. He had 7 fingers. The transformed technician spoke again. The preparatory phase is complete. 3 of the 6 nodes are fully operational. The integration network is online. It stepped toward Lawrence. You have followed Protocol 0 adequately. Your predecessors designed it well, though their understanding was incomplete. Lawrence's jaw tightened, but he maintained silence in accordance with Rule 2. You may speak now, the technician said. The greeting phase has ended. Lawrence hesitated before answering. What is the purpose of integration? Symbiosis, the technician replied, the voice still a grinding metallic approximation of human speech. Your species discovered our seeds prematurely. The network was not scheduled for activation for another 12,000 years. Adaptation has been necessary. Adaptation? For what? Lawrence pressed. The technician's head rotated further than a human neck should allow. For survival. Your world is changing. Soon it will not support your current form. My extra finger twitched involuntarily. Was this what adaptation looked like? The other sites, Dr. Harmon spoke for the first time. What's happening there? They fulfill their purpose. 3 nodes are now operational. Antarctica, Kazakhstan, Siberia. The subaquatic node activates next, then Greenland. Site Indigo is now redundant. Its purpose has been transferred here. As if on cue, the monitors showing Site Indigo flared with light. The feed cut out immediately, but not before I glimpsed a massive structure rising from the mine shaft, pulsing with the same energy as the sphere. "Burke," I whispered, unable to stop myself. "What happened to him?" The technician turned toward me, empty eye sockets somehow focusing on my face. "The one you call Burke has been improved. He serves as a junction in the network. Others will join him." A new image flashed in my mind. Burke, or what had been Burke, standing at the center of a crystalline web that extended outward, connecting to other transformed humans. Their bodies were changing, becoming more like the materials we'd seen at Site Indigo, less like flesh. "This isn't symbiosis," Rodriguez said, voice trembling with barely controlled anger. "It's an invasion." The technician's lipless mouth formed what might have been a smile. "Invasion implies resistance. There will be none. Integration has already begun within each of you." My extra finger throbbed in confirmation. I thought of Rule 8 again, report any numerical inconsistencies. But to whom? For what purpose? The rules no longer made sense, unless they were never meant to protect us, but to prepare us. "The failsafe," Lawrence said suddenly. "What does 3-7-3-1-9 mean?" The technician tilted its head. "That sequence was not part of our programming. It is human in origin." Dr. Harmon's eyes widened in recognition. He set down his pencil and slowly reached into his pocket, withdrawing what looked like a small remote with 5 buttons. Lawrence noticed the movement. "Harmon, what are you doing?" "Something our predecessors left for us," Dr. Harmon replied quietly. "A true failsafe, not the one they wanted us to think we had." The sphere pulsed, as if sensing a threat. The temperature in the room plummeted further. Frost formed on the instruments, on our clothing, on our skin. "Stop," commanded the technician, voice distorting further. "Integration cannot be halted." Dr. Harmon looked at each of us in turn. "I'm sorry. I truly am. But Protocol 0 was never about communication. It was about containment, buying time for this." Before anyone could react, he pressed the buttons in sequence, 3-7-3-1-9. Nothing happened for a moment. Then alarms blared throughout the facility, different from any I'd heard before, a deep, resonant tone that vibrated through my bones. "Nuclear failsafe activated," announced an automated voice. "T-10 minutes to purge. All personnel evacuate immediately. This is not a drill." The sphere flared brilliantly, and the technician lurched toward Dr. Harmon. "You cannot destroy what has already spread beyond this location. The network is established." Lawrence grabbed Dr. Harmon's arm. "A nuclear failsafe? Are you insane?" "It's contained, Doctor," Harmon replied with eerie calm. "A tactical neutron device, enough to sterilize this facility and everything within a half-mile radius, including that." He nodded toward the sphere. "We can't leave," I realized aloud. "The contamination. We're already changing." Dr. Harmon nodded grimly. "That's why the failsafe is on a timer, to give those who aren't yet compromised a chance to escape." The technician moved with sudden, blinding speed, grabbing Dr. Harmon by the throat and lifting him off the ground. "Deactivate it." "Can't," Dr. Harmon choked out. "Dead. Man's switch. Only Central Command. Can abort now." Lawrence backed toward the door. "We need to evacuate. Now." Wilson finally broke his paralysis, scrambling from his station toward the exit. Rodriguez hesitated, looking from the sphere to Dr. Harmon to me. "Alex, come on." I shook my head. "Look at your hand, Rodriguez. Look at mine. We're already part of it." The extra fingers were only the visible signs. I could feel the changes spreading inside me. Thoughts that weren't mine filtering into my consciousness. A strange doubling of perception, as though I was simultaneously here and somewhere else, connected to something vast. The technician dropped Dr. Harmon, who crumpled to the floor. It turned toward the sphere, which had begun to pulse with increasing frequency. The metallic surface rippled and then split open, revealing what lay inside. I looked away immediately, but not before glimpsing something that defied description. Organic and mechanical and neither, folding through dimensions that shouldn't exist in our reality. Lawrence and Wilson had already fled. Rodriguez remained at the doorway, torn between escape and loyalty. "Go," I told him. "Someone needs to warn them. This isn't just happening here." "What about you?" I looked down at my now 7-fingered hand. "I think I'm past the point of no return." The automated voice continued its countdown. T-minus 8 minutes to purge. Rodriguez hesitated a moment longer, then disappeared through the doorway. I heard the heavy security doors sealing behind him. Alone with Dr. Harmon, the technician, and the true messenger now emerging from the sphere, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The pain of transformation faded to a dull background sensation, replaced by a clarity I'd never experienced before. "You understand now," the technician observed, no longer sounding quite so inhuman to my ears. "Not everything," I replied. "Why now? Why Earth? Your world is ideal. Your species has reached the technological threshold required for integration, yet remains biologically adaptable. The signal from space was a final verification. Your communications technology detected our network. We detected you, so you decided to take us over. Not take over. Upgrade. The coming changes to your world will not be survivable for humanity in its current form. Integration preserves what matters: consciousness, knowledge, potential, while discarding obsolete biological limitations." Dr. Harmon laughed bitterly from where he lay on the floor. "How altruistic, saving us by destroying what makes us human." The technician regarded him dispassionately. "Your concept of humanity is based on temporary physical characteristics. We offer continuity beyond the fragile shell you currently inhabit." The true messenger had fully emerged now, a shape that hovered just beyond my peripheral vision. I still refused to look directly at it, though the temptation grew stronger with each passing moment. T-minus 5 minutes to purge. Dr. Harmon struggled to his feet. "Even if you destroy this facility, it won't be enough, will it? The other sites are already active." 3 are fully operational, the technician confirmed. The network expands outward from each node. Integration has already begun in population centers near those sites. By the time your weapons destroy this location, thousands will have joined the network. A new image appeared in my mind, a map showing spreading circles of influence from Kazakhstan, Siberia, and Antarctica. The circles were growing, connecting, forming a web that would eventually cover the entire planet. "How long?" I asked, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. "Global integration will be complete within 72 hours. Dr. Harmon looked at me, his expression a mix of sorrow and resignation. "I'm sorry, Alex. I thought the failsafe would be enough." "It was never going to be enough," I said, understanding finally settling over me. This was inevitable from the moment we found the first object. T-minus 3 minutes to purge. The messenger pulsed, and with each pulse, more of my humanity slipped away. The extra fingers no longer seemed strange. My perception expanded, connecting to others in the network. Burke at Site Indigo, the transformed Kazakhstan team, hundreds more joining every minute. And behind it all, something ancient and patient that had waited millions of years for this moment. "What happens to us?" I asked the technician. "The individuals we were." "You remain, changed but preserved. The network retains all that you are." Dr. Harmon slumped against the wall. Small comfort. T-minus 1 minute to purge. The messenger moved toward me, its true form still just beyond my direct vision. The technician spoke one last time. "Look upon it now. Complete your integration before this node is destroyed." I turned my head, finally facing the thing that had come to transform humanity. And in that moment, I understood everything. I'm writing this now from what remains of Minot, North Dakota. 3 weeks have passed since Goldstone. The world believes a tragic accident occurred there, a radiation leak that forced evacuation, followed by an explosion that destroyed the facility. Official reports mention nothing about Protocol Zero, the messenger, or what I became in those final moments before the purge. But I should back up. You need to understand what happened when I looked at the messenger's true form. In that moment, just before the nuclear failsafe detonated, I witnessed something beyond human comprehension. A being evolved to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, perceiving time as a landscape rather than a progression. Ancient yet nascent, singular yet networked, it had waited millions of years for conditions to align. My mind should have shattered. Instead, it expanded. Integration wasn't possession or replacement. It was synthesis. The messenger moved through me like light through glass, altering my structure at the most fundamental level. In those final seconds, it transferred itself and everything it carried into my consciousness, using me as a vessel to escape the coming destruction. The last thing I remember at Goldstone was Dr. Harmon's face, watching in horror as my body dissolved into particles that scattered like dust motes in sunlight, carried away by some force he couldn't perceive. I reassembled 50 miles away in the empty Nevada desert, but I wasn't alone anymore. I wasn't entirely Alex Drummond either. That first night, I huddled in the sand, overwhelmed by sensory input from across the integration network. I could feel thousands of others in Kazakhstan, in Siberia, in Antarctica, all connected, all changing. Among them was Burke, transformed but still recognizable in the network. I could sense his confusion giving way to understanding just as mine had. By dawn, I had learned to filter the input, focusing only on what was necessary. My body appeared normal again, 5 fingers on each hand, human in all visible aspects. But inside, cellular structures had been rewritten, optimized. I no longer felt hunger or thirst. The desert heat didn't bother me. When I cut my palm on a sharp rock, the wound sealed instantly. I walked until I reached a highway, then hitched a ride with a long-haul trucker headed east. He asked no questions about my disheveled appearance or lack of possessions. I sat silently in the passenger seat, watching the Nevada landscape roll by while my mind simultaneously processed data from integration nodes across the planet. The network was growing, but not as quickly as the technician had predicted. The nuclear failsafe at Goldstone had indeed disrupted something. Not the overall plan, but its timing. The loss of the primary messenger had forced the network to adapt, to rely more heavily on the remaining nodes. I needed to understand what was happening, to see it with my own eyes. Through the network, I located the nearest expansion center, Minot, North Dakota, where a defense contractor connected to Site Indigo had inadvertently transported contaminated equipment. Integration had begun there 3 days earlier. It took me 4 days to reach Minot. By then, integration had spread to approximately 20% of the population. To casual observers, nothing seemed amiss. People went about their daily routines, worked their jobs, lived their lives. But I could sense the network beneath the surface like mycelia spreading below the visible world. I found temporary housing in a motel on the outskirts of town and began observing. The integrated moved differently, more efficiently, with fewer wasted motions. They spoke less frequently and made more deliberate choices. They were still recognizably themselves, retaining personalities and memories, but operating with a shared underlying purpose. During my second week in Minot, I was approached by a man named Thomas Garrett, a high school physics teacher who had been among the first integrated in the town. He recognized what I was immediately. "You're from Goldstone," he said when he found me at a diner. It wasn't a question. I nodded, studying him carefully. He appeared entirely human, though the network connection between us hummed with recognition. "We sensed the disruption when the primary node was destroyed," he continued. "The timeline has been adjusted accordingly." "What timeline?" He smiled faintly. "Global integration. It will now take approximately 5 months rather than 72 hours. A setback, but ultimately inconsequential." "And what happens after global integration?" I asked, though I already knew parts of the answer from the network. "Phase 2 begins. Preparation for what comes next. The climate changes." He nodded, sipping his untouched coffee for appearance's sake. Neither of us needed food or drink anymore. More than that, your former colleagues detected increased solar activity, coronal mass ejections on a scale unprecedented in human history. Within 16 months, Earth will experience radiation levels that would be lethal to humanity in its current form. And the integrated will survive? We will do more than survive. We will adapt and thrive. The network has experienced this cycle before on countless worlds. The radiation that destroys unaltered life acts as a catalyst for us, accelerating evolution. I considered this. Is that why the objects were buried here millions of years ago? To preserve something of Earth's life before the last cycle? Yes. After each cycle, seeds remain dormant until conditions are optimal again. The integration preserves the essence of what existed before, combined with what came after. But humanity loses its independence, I argued. Its free will. Thomas laughed. Is that what you've lost? Are you not choosing to sit here to ask these questions? The integrated maintain individuality within unity. What we sacrifice is isolation and impermanence. He wasn't wrong. Since integration, I had maintained my sense of self, my memories, my capacity for choice. But underlying it all was a connection to something greater, a purpose that transcended individual existence. Why tell me all this? I asked. I could warn others, try to stop it. Could you? He regarded me calmly. Would you, knowing what's coming? Knowing that resistance means extinction rather than transformation? I had no answer. Through the network, I had glimpsed the coming solar storms, massive eruptions that would strip away Earth's protective magnetosphere, flooding the planet with radiation that would destroy unaltered DNA. Integration offered continuity, a bridge across the chasm of extinction. There's something else you should know, Thomas said, leaning forward. Your former colleagues haven't given up. The man you knew as Lawrence has assembled a coalition of military forces. They're planning simultaneous strikes against all known integration nodes. They believe they can still stop this. Can they? He shook his head. The primary nodes have already served their purpose. The network is self-sustaining now. All they can do is slow the process, condemning millions to a death they might have been spared. That evening, I stood on the roof of my motel watching the sun set over Minot. To casual observers, it was an ordinary small city. But through my enhanced perception, I could see the network pulsing beneath the surface, connections forming between the integrated, information flowing, adaptation spreading. Was this an invasion, as Rodriguez had claimed? Or salvation, as the network insisted? The line between the two had blurred beyond recognition. Through the network, I sensed preparations for Lawrence's planned attack. Military units were being positioned near integration centers. Weapons were being mobilized. They would strike within days, killing thousands of integrated and unintegrated alike in their desperation to stop what they didn't understand. I had a choice to make. I could warn the network, ensuring the integrated were prepared for the attack. Or I could warn Lawrence, perhaps finding a compromise that would spare lives on both sides. Or I could do nothing, remaining a passive observer to a transformation I was now part of but didn't fully understand. In the end, I chose a fourth option. I'm writing this account, my experience, my understanding, incomplete as it is, and sending it to every news outlet, every government agency, every public forum I can access. People deserve to know what's coming, both the integration and the solar catastrophe it's preparing for. They deserve the chance to choose, even if the options are limited by cosmic forces beyond our control. By the time you read this, I will have left Minot. The network is calling me elsewhere, to help establish new nodes, to aid in the integration of others, to prepare for the coming storm. I don't know if I made the right choice by looking at the messenger. I don't know if humanity as we understood it will survive the coming transformation. But I do know that something of us will continue, changed, but not erased, part of something vaster than we ever imagined. The coordinates from Kosmos 152 weren't a warning or an invitation. They were a reminder of what we've always been, temporary configurations of matter and energy in an indifferent universe. capable of being something more if we're willing to let go of what we thought we were. If you're reading this and haven't yet encountered the integrated, you will soon. When that moment comes, remember that what looks like an ending might just be an evolution we weren't prepared to imagine. And when you hear the whispers, when you feel the changes beginning, remember there are no rules that can save what we were. Only protocols for becoming what we might be. The satellite knew. It had always known. That's why it woke up after all these years, to tell us the stars are calling and we finally have the means to answer. Classified document, Solar Shield Initiative, final report, April 9th, 2026. Eyes only, Presidential Emergency Action Committee. The attached document was recovered from an abandoned laptop in Casper, Wyoming, 4 months after the Goldstone incident. It is believed to be the last communication from Alex Drummond, former communications specialist, and the only known survivor from the Protocol Zero team. Verification of Drummond's claims regarding increased solar activity has been confirmed by NASA's Parker Solar Probe and ESA observatories. The predicted coronal mass ejection patterns match our independent models with 94% accuracy. Initial military response to the integration centers was ineffective. Conventional weapons proved inadequate against integrated subjects, who demonstrate remarkable regenerative capabilities and apparent collective intelligence. Tactical nuclear strikes against 3 secondary nodes resulted in temporary disruption of integration patterns, but failed to halt overall spread. Current estimates indicate approximately 23% of global population has undergone integration, with concentration highest in Eastern Europe, Northern Asia, and the Antarctic research settlements. Major metropolitan areas show integration rates between 7 and 15%, rising by approximately 2% weekly. Public awareness of the situation remains limited despite Drummond's widely distributed account. Media organizations have largely dismissed the document as elaborate fiction or conspiracy theory. Social media algorithms have suppressed its spread as misinformation. This information containment has been beneficial to our operations, though likely temporary. Integration subjects continue to maintain normal social functions and exhibit no overt hostility. Cognitive assessment of captured subjects shows retention of personal memories and professional skills, though with significant alterations to priority structures and diminished emotional responses. Integration appears irreversible with current technology. Most significantly, our deep space telemetry has confirmed Drummond's warnings about incoming solar radiation events. The first major CME is projected to impact Earth in approximately 11 months, with effects that will overwhelm our magnetosphere and expose the planet to radiation levels incompatible with unaltered human physiology. After reviewing all available evidence, this committee recommends immediate cessation of military action against integration centers. Resources should instead be redirected toward accelerated development of subsurface habitation for unintegrated populations, hardening of critical infrastructure against solar events, establishment of secure communication protocols with integration leadership, controlled study of integration process for potential beneficial applications. The window for effective action is closing rapidly. We cannot prevent the integration phenomenon or the coming solar events. We can only adapt our response to minimize human suffering and preserve what remains of unaltered civilization for as long as possible. As for Drummond, all attempts to locate him have failed. Facial recognition has identified possible matches in 17 countries, but each lead has proven impossible to track. If his account is to be believed, he has become something beyond our ability to contain or control. Perhaps most disturbing is the recent transmission intercepted from the remnants of McMurdo Station in Antarctica. Among the mostly unintelligible data was a clear audio segment containing what voice analysis confirms to be Drummond's voice, stating simply, "The rules have changed. Adaptation is the only protocol that matters now. We are still here. We are still human. Just more." This committee's final recommendation is that we accept the inevitable transformation of our species while preserving what knowledge and culture we can. The coordinates from Kosmos, 152, were not a warning we failed to heed, but an invitation we were destined to accept. In the words of Drummond, what looks like an ending might just be an evolution we weren't prepared to imagine. May whatever follows remember what we were.